Today's notes are going to be over standard NS2, and write the date, whatever your date is that you are doing this lesson. And we're going to be asking the question, how is the standard algorithm, and the one we're using today is long division, how is it used to solve division problems? We're going to color our heading. I like to color code, so I make sure that my heading is blue for math. On the still picture of these notes, you will see a printed piece of paper that has the steps written on it. You can go ahead and copy that in your own handwriting at your own leisure. I'm not going to take the time today to have you watch me write that out. I'm just going to take the time today to explain it. So one of the things that I want you to remember is that when you're working in long division, you're working from left to right. That's a key thing to remember, and I'll explain what that means in just a second. And I'm going to tape those directions onto my page so that you can see. You would hand write that out. I'm not going to take that time. But I do want to take the time so that I can explain it to you. So the problem that is in the notes is 14,586 divided by 6. So our dividend, that's the number we're dividing, it's 14,586. If you notice, I didn't put any commas in there. When you're doing long division, it gets really messy if you start putting commas in there, especially once we start dealing with decimals and we start working with dividing decimals. You don't want to get your decimal and your comma confused, which can happen, and then that can really make a mess out of your problem. So I like to leave the commas out of my long division. Not a bad idea that when you're done and you're doing a final answer, reinserting your commas in the right places. But for now, we're just going to leave them out. So the first thing I'm going to ask myself, and this is what I mean by left to right. So I'm going to go into the dividend, and that's the number that we're trying to break up into smaller pieces. We're going to break it up into 6 pieces, and we want to see how many would go into each of those 6 sections. So when I'm doing that, I'm going to start from the left, that first digit, or that digit on the farthest left, and we're going to work our way to the right. So that's what I mean by working left to right. And we're literally going to go 1 digit at a time. And as we work our way across, we're going to ask ourselves each time, how many times can this digit be divided? So the first one says, how many times does 6 go into 1? So I'm asking myself here, here's my 1, how many times can I put 6 items into 1? And I can't. It goes in 0 times. I just can't get 6 items into 1. So that is going to be 0, and I'm going to put that right up above the 1. Zeros are very important in math. We use them a lot, and a lot of times they don't change the value of everything, but it sure does make sure that we keep our work neat. So I put the 0 there, And this was the first step. We asked ourselves how many times 6 could go into 1, and it just can't do it, so we put a 0 there. Okay? So then I ask myself, okay, now I didn't use that 1, so I'm going to combine that with the 4, and I'm going to think of this as 14. So I'm going to say, how many times does 6 go into 14? Well, it goes in 2 times, because once is 6. That's not close enough. I think I can get closer. 6 times 2 is 12. So now I have 6 times 2 is 12, and I'm going to take that away from the 14. So I'm going to subtract it. And because these numbers are close to each other, I can say 14 minus 12 is 2. If they were farther apart from each other, then I would do my standard stacking of the subtraction, and I would say 4 minus 2 is 2, 1 minus 1 is 0. Either way. So I did all of that asking myself if 6 will go into 14. That was this step. So I'm going to give this a color the same as in the notes. And I have it like that. So now I'm going to keep going. I've used the 1, I've used the 4, but I've got a 5 here and I haven't dealt with that yet. So I'm going to bring that 5 down and combine it with what was left over from the 14 minus 2, and I'm going to have 25. So now I'm going to stop and I'm going to think, how many times does 6 go into 25? Or what's the closest I can get? Well, 2 was 12. So I bet 4 would be 24, and it sure is. So 6 times 4 is 24. So then I subtract. So now I have 25 minus 24. Those are really close to each other, so I can just say 1. I don't have to do my stack subtraction. You can if you want to. And then I'm going to take my yellow, because this was this step where I dealt with that 5. Do you have to color code every time you do long division? Absolutely not. I'm just using these colors to show you my steps. If the first few times you do long division problems you want to color code, absolutely. It's kind of fun. It's kind of relaxing. All right, so how many times does 6 go into? Oh, I got to bring that 8 down so I can use it. I'm going to combine it with that 1, and I'm going to say 18. So now I'm going to say to myself, how many times does 6 go into 18? And I know my multiplication facts, so it's 6 times 3, and 6 times 3 is 18. So now I can say 18 minus 18, which is 0. And that's what I did for this step. So I have, how many times does 6 go into 18? That was this step. And I have 1 digit left. I have a 6, and I'm going to bring that 6 down, and I'm going to say to myself, how many times does 6 go into 6? Well, we know it'll go in 1 time. So 6 times 1 is 6. And I'm going to subtract that, and I'm going to get 0. And if you notice, I put a line through my 0. That's an old habit from when I was in elementary school. I must have had a teacher, and I don't remember who it was, but I had a teacher who taught us that when you got done with your problem and you couldn't go any farther, to draw a line through that 0 so that you knew that you were done. So that old habit has stuck with me, and sometimes I don't even know I'm doing it. So that's why it's there, and that's why you're going to see me do that. If the 0 doesn't have a line through it, like right here, That's because I wasn't done. I knew there was more to do. I wish I could remember that teacher's name. I don't remember who it was. All right, so now there's long division.